Have you ever wondered why you feel so certain about what is good and evil, as if that voice inside you was exclusively yours, as if you had arrived at all these moral conclusions on your own? What if I told you that voice isn't yours, that you're merely repeating a code that was imprinted on you, like an invisible tattoo you didn't even choose to get? When someone asks where your moral values come from, you probably answer with something like, "From my conscience," or "from my personal principles." You truly believe that what you consider right or wrong was born within you, like a plant that sprouted spontaneously in your inner garden. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? Believing that you are the author of your own morality, that you arrived at conclusions about what is fair, honest, and respectable all by yourself. This is the great illusion of our age, the idea that we are autonomous individuals who freely decide our moral code, as if each of us were an isolated moral island, building our own ethical system from scratch. Do you really believe that if you had been born in another culture, in another century, or even in another family, you would still have exactly the same moral values you have today? The truth is that you're participating in a great collective theater without realizing it. When you feel repulsion towards certain behaviors or admire others, it's not your inner voice speaking. It's the voice of society resonating through you. That's why you feel so uncomfortable when you break a rule, even when no one is watching. That feeling of guilt doesn't come from within. It comes from outside. It's society that has implanted an invisible observer in you, a judge who never takes a vacation. Do you notice how we feel morally superior to people from other eras? How could someone own slaves and think it was normal? We ask ourselves, horrified. But we rarely stop to think that if we had been born in that society, we would probably share those very values that we condemn today. Morality isn't a personal discovery. It's a social inheritance. This illusion of moral autonomy is so deep that we viscerally reject the idea of being mere vessels for collective values. You're feeling that resistance right now, aren't you? The sensation that I'm attacking something fundamental about who you are. This discomfort reveals how much value we place on the fiction of the independent moral self. But observe carefully. When you passionately defend some moral principle, aren't you just repeating what you learned from your parents, teachers, friends, books, movies, and the entire cultural web that formed you? Do you believe you've thought about every moral value you carry, tested each one of them? Or did you simply adopt the complete package your culture offered? Why do people from different cultures have such distinct moral convictions, yet all equally deeply rooted? If morality were personal, we would see random distributions of values. But we don't see that. We see cultural clusters of morality, predictable patterns that follow social lines, not individual ones. If this content is already awakening something unsettling in you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel right now and stay until the end. And I promise your way of seeing the world and yourself will never be the same after we understand what Émile Durkheim discovered about the true nature of our morality. Have you noticed how your moral sense intensifies when you're in a group? How you feel the need to express indignation on social media when everyone else is doing the same? And how, curiously, your moral indignation tends to align perfectly with that of your social circle. It's not a coincidence. It's exactly what Émile Durkheim discovered more than a century ago. From a young age, we're trained to believe that morality is something deeply personal. Our favorite movies celebrate the hero who follows their internal moral compass against social pressure. Our self-help books tell us to find our own values. Our digital influencers talk about being authentic and following your heart. This entire cultural chorus reinforces the same message. Morality comes from within, not from outside. This is the great cultural myth of moral individualism. It's a comforting fiction that tells us the story that we are autonomous individuals, independently arriving at our moral conclusions through pure personal reflection. It's the narrative that makes us believe we have a special connection to universal moral principles, as if we could access them directly without social mediation. But this myth quickly crumbles when we observe it carefully. Why do people from different cultures have such distinct sets of moral values? Why is what's considered virtuous in one society seen as repulsive in another? If morality were truly personal, we would see a random distribution of moral values around the world. But that's not what we observe. We see clear patterns, moral clusters that follow cultural lines, not individual ones. Think about the moral changes we've witnessed in our own society. How do we explain that certain behaviors, considered morally acceptable 50 years ago, are seen as abominable today? How do we explain that practices once condemned are now celebrated? Did everyone independently arrive at the same moral conclusions at the same time? Or are we simply surfing on waves of collective morality? In truth, what we call my personal morality is simply the point where social pressure found the least resistance in us. It's like water taking the shape of its container. You believe you possess your own moral values, but they are actually the values of your community flowing through you. As Durkheim observed in The Division of Labor in Society, it is not the individual who creates morality, but society that imprints it on them. Think about your last strong moral judgment. Perhaps it was about politics, sexual behavior, religion, or any other value-laden topic. Did you really examine all possible perspectives on the subject, weighed all arguments, considered the cultural and historical circumstances? Or did you simply feel an immediate repulsion or attraction, which you later rationalized with arguments? The truth is that your moral feelings arise first, that visceral sense of right or wrong, and then you find reasons to justify them. And these feelings are not your creations, they are social implants. As Durkheim wrote, "When I fulfill my obligations as brother, husband, or citizen, when I execute the contracts I have signed, I perform duties which are defined externally to myself." Morality doesn't come from within, it comes from outside. It's not personal, it's social. You walk through life believing you're morally free, yet you're trapped in an invisible cage. A social construction so seamless, you mistake it for your own thoughts. This cage has no physical bars. Its restraints are the collective moral sentiments that have been fused into your consciousness since birth. You can't see these bars because they're not external to you. They've become you. Think of the last time you felt morally disgusted. That visceral reaction wasn't an expression of your unique moral self. It was society's alarm system installed within you. The discomfort you felt wasn't your personal moral compass activating. It was a social enforcement mechanism firing. Your moral reactions are so automatic, so immediate, that they create the perfect illusion of being inherently yours. Durkheim revealed this invisible prison in his groundbreaking work, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, where he showed how even our most sacred feelings are social productions. The moral outrage you feel when witnessing someone violate what you consider sacred isn't your individual response. It's the collective consciousness speaking through you. Your moral emotions are ventriloquism on a social scale. Consider how powerfully you're controlled by this invisible system. You can violate a legal rule and feel nothing if you believe the law is unjust. But violate what you consider a moral rule, and the punishment is immediate and comes from within: shame, guilt, self-disgust. No external authority needed. Society has installed its own police officer inside your mind, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never taking a day off. Your moral cage is customized to your social group. It feels natural because everyone around you shares roughly the same prison. You validate each other's moral reactions, creating the illusion that these reactions are objectively correct rather than collectively constructed. When everyone in your echo chamber expresses the same moral outrage online, it reinforces the belief that your shared indignation is natural and universal, not a product of your specific social location. The prison extends to your very identity. You don't just have moral beliefs, you are your moral beliefs. I'm the kind of person who stands up for justice. I could never do something so dishonest. These aren't just statements about your values, they're declarations of your perceived moral essence. This fusion of morality and identity makes the cage even more inescapable. To question your moral intuitions feels like questioning who you fundamentally are. This is why moral disagreements feel so threatening. When someone challenges your moral position, they're not just disputing an idea, they're threatening your identity and challenging the social reality that gives your life meaning. No wonder moral arguments rarely change minds. They're not really about rational exchange, but about defending the integrity of different social worlds. Your moral language itself is part of the prison. The words good, evil, right, wrong. These aren't neutral descriptors, but powerful social tools. When you call something wrong, you're not just describing your preference. You're invoking the full weight of social authority. You're making a claim that transcends personal opinion, a claim to speak on behalf of your entire moral community. The bars of this cage are invisible, but they're no less real for being unseen. And the most insidious part? You've come to love your cage. You defend it. You mistake it for freedom. Émile Durkheim would look at our digital moral outrage, our online virtue signaling, our cultural wars, and smile with recognition. Over a century ago, in works like The Division of Labor in Society and The Rules of Sociological Method, he revolutionized how we understand morality by revealing its fundamentally social nature. While philosophers like Kant sought the source of morality in individual reason, and religious thinkers located it in divine command, Durkheim discovered something far more profound. Morality exists not within us, but between us. The totality of beliefs and sentiments common to average citizens of the same society forms a determinate system which has its own life, Durkheim wrote. He called this the collective consciousness, a moral reality that transcends individuals while simultaneously living through them. This isn't just an abstract theory. It explains why moral norms can feel so objectively real to us, while varying so dramatically across cultures and time periods. In Suicide, perhaps his most counterintuitive work, Durkheim demonstrated how even the most personal, intimate decision, taking one's own life, follows predictable social patterns. Suicide rates remain remarkably stable within societies, yet vary dramatically between them. Even our most private moral choices bear the unmistakable fingerprints of social influence. The way you judge right from wrong isn't the product of your unique moral reasoning. It's a manifestation of your social integration and the collective moral reality you inhabit. Durkheim observed that societies need shared moral frameworks to function. Without collective moral sentiments binding us together, cooperation would collapse. But he also recognized that these moral systems aren't static. They evolve as societies change. In traditional societies, morality is mechanical, enforced through rigid conformity. In modern, complex societies, it becomes more organic, allowing for greater individual variation while still maintaining social cohesion. Your sense of having personal morality is itself a product of living in a modern society that values the appearance of individual moral autonomy. Look at how morality functions in your everyday life. When you feel moral indignation, it's not just an internal emotional state. It's a social act that reinforces group boundaries. When you express moral outrage online, you're not merely stating your personal view, you're participating in a ritual that strengthens collective identities. As Durkheim noted, moral emotions aren't just about judging right and wrong. They're about signaling group membership and reinforcing social solidarity. This is why moral language has a uniquely commanding quality. When you declare something morally wrong, you're not just expressing a preference like saying you dislike broccoli. You're making a claim that carries the implicit authority of your entire social group. You're invoking something that feels larger than yourself, because it is larger than yourself. It's the voice of the collective speaking through you. Durkheim's insight was that morality isn't just influenced by society. It is society experiencing itself through you. Your moral intuitions are society's way of maintaining its own existence. When you feel the force of moral obligation, you're feeling the weight of the social whole pressing on your individual consciousness. That pressure isn't an interference with your authentic moral self. It's the very thing that makes moral experience possible. You're experiencing cognitive dissonance right now. Part of you recognizes the truth in what I'm saying, that your moral judgments are social products, not personal discoveries. Another part fiercely resists this idea because it threatens something fundamental about how you see yourself. This internal conflict is itself evidence of Durkheim's thesis. The discomfort you feel comes from challenging not just an idea, but the social reality that constitutes your sense of self. What does it mean for you if your deepest moral convictions are the very beliefs you think define who you are actually social scripts playing through you? If what you call your conscience is actually the internalized voice of your society? This realization creates an existential crisis. If your moral self isn't truly yours, then who are you? The algorithms of social media understand this social nature of morality better than most humans do. They don't show you content that challenges your moral beliefs. They feed you material that reinforces the moral cage you already inhabit. Each like, share, and angry reaction to moral content doesn't expand your moral understanding. It forges stronger bars for your invisible prison. When you express moral outrage online, you're not exercising moral freedom. You're performing a social ritual that tightens collective bonds while narrowing your moral imagination. Consider how predictable your moral outrage has become. Do you notice how your moral attention focuses precisely where your social group directs it? How easily you become indignant about the approved targets of criticism while remaining blind to others. This selective moral vision isn't a coincidence. It's a function of your social position. Different social groups have different moral blind spots, different sacred values, different taboos, all experienced by their members as natural and obvious, rather than constructed and contingent. You're caught in a fundamental tension. As Durkheim recognized, you need society's moral framework to function as a human being. Without shared moral reality, social cooperation would be impossible. Yet once you recognize the social nature of morality, you can never again fully immerse yourself in the comforting illusion that your moral reactions are entirely your own. You're forever caught between being a moral actor within society and a conscious observer of how society constructs that moral stage. The true crisis comes when you realize you can't simply think your way out of this condition. Even your most radical moral questioning occurs within the boundaries of what your society makes thinkable. Even your rebellion against conventional morality takes forms that your culture has prepared for you. As Durkheim wrote, man cannot live among things without forming ideas about them according to which he regulates his behavior. These ideas aren't your private creation, but the product of collective life. You are not what you think you are. You are not the autonomous moral agent you believe yourself to be. You're a node in a social network, a vessel through which collective moral sentiments flow. Your strongest moral convictions, your deepest sense of right and wrong, your most visceral reactions of disgust and approval, none of these originated within you. They were installed in you by the particular configuration of social forces that shaped your development. This realization doesn't diminish you. It connects you to something larger. But it does require surrendering the narcissistic fiction that you are the author of your own moral story. You're not the writer, you're being written. So where does this leave you? If morality is social rather than personal, does that mean all moral positions are merely cultural constructs with no real substance? Does Durkheim's insight lead to moral relativism or nihilism? Not at all. In fact, understanding the social nature of morality offers a more profound foundation for ethical life than the myth of individual moral autonomy ever could. Recognizing that morality is social doesn't diminish its importance. It reveals its true power. Morality isn't just about personal virtue, it's about the fabric that holds society together. When you understand that your moral reactions are part of a collective consciousness, you gain the ability to relate to them more consciously. You can ask not just, is this right or wrong, but what social function does this moral judgment serve? Whose interest does it protect? What kind of society does it create? Durkheim himself understood that modern societies need to evolve beyond rigid mechanical forms of moral solidarity toward more reflective, organic forms that accommodate greater diversity while maintaining social cohesion. In moral education, he argued that the goal isn't to escape social influence, but to develop a more conscious relationship with it, to transform blind moral conformity into reflective moral participation. This perspective allows you to navigate moral disagreements with greater wisdom. When you encounter someone with radically different moral intuitions, you can recognize that you're not just dealing with a person who has wrong views, but someone shaped by a different social reality. This doesn't mean you must accept all moral positions as equally valid, but it does invite a deeper understanding of how moral differences emerge from different social contexts. The liberation comes not from escaping social influence, which is impossible, but from becoming conscious of it. This awareness creates space between your immediate moral reactions and your response to them. You can notice when moral outrage is being manipulated, when virtue signaling is substituting for genuine ethical action, when moral language is being used to enforce conformity rather than promote flourishing. Durkheim's insight invites us to build moral communities more consciously. If morality is social, then the quality of our shared moral life depends on the quality of our social relationships. The question becomes not just, what should I believe is right, but what kind of moral community should we create together? This shifts ethics from a private pursuit to a collective project, which is what it always was, though the myth of moral individualism obscured this truth. If this perspective has awakened something in you, if it's shifted how you understand yourself and others, don't let this realization fade. Share this video with someone whose thinking you respect. Start conversations about the social nature of our moral lives. Question the moral reactions that feel most automatic, most natural to you, as these are precisely where social programming runs deepest. Subscribe to this channel for more content that challenges the comfortable illusions we live by. Because the true moral life begins not with certainty, but with questioning. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Not with moral isolation, but with moral connection. As Durkheim showed us, we are all part of something larger than ourselves, and it is only together that we can create a moral world worthy of our humanity.